Hey guys, I've been trying to figure out a way lately to post more videos. Every time I do post a video, I feel like it's once a year, twice a year, and everyone's, wondering where I'm at and what I'm doing. So I'm trying to figure out a way to post videos more often, um, and kind of talk about some of the experience I have, what works for me, um, some of the more common questions that I deal with, where I seem to be answering 10, 15 times over on a single video. So, I'm just going to, start a little series. Maybe I'll post a video once a week, just talking about, certain subjects in the Dart Frog community where, it's everything is up for debate. Um, you know, Not everyone has the answer of what works as an answer. What works, what doesn't work. It's what works for you, what doesn't work for you. Um, so, in terms of that, I guess I'm going to start this video with, what the number one question I get more often than anything else is, um, how did I make my background in my tank or in my vivarium? Um, you know, what's it made out of? What are the processes? And, um, how long does it hold up? Is it good for plant growth? All things regarding that. That's what I'm going to talk about in this video. Maybe next week I'll talk about lighting, or plants, but this specifically I'm going to talk about, just the backgrounds that I do. And so to start, from my very first Dart Frog tank that I built in 2000, 2000. Yeah, that one did not have a background. It was a sheet that you buy at a pet store that had basically it's like a poster, but it has like plants and stuff. That was my very first tank that I built in 2000. But in 2001, I did my first tank with the Great Stuff expanding foam. And, I still use the Great Stuff expanding foam for all my backgrounds. And I use the blue can. Some of my buddies use the red can. I like the blue because it expands for me a little more than the red can, and it just gives me more liberty to carve shapes into it that I want, rather than if it didn't expand as much, then I don't have as much freedom to carve. You have to kind of be more precise on how you lay the foam rather than the way you carve it. The way I do it, I can lay the foam down however the heck I want and just spray gobs of it and carve it down. I carve tons of foam off of the original way it looks. I carve it. I have pretty much a trash bag full of foam when I'm doing tanks. Because I carve so much of it off. But it seems like a lot of waste, but the end result is what I think a really nice result, and it looks right for me, and it's the cans aren't very expensive. I mean, I think they're $3 to $5, something like that for a can. Which a tank this size, 2 cans is all you need, maybe 1.5. Now the big tank that I had, I may have used 10 cans, but it's a 180-gallon tank. It's a large vivarium, so that's to be expected. So yeah, I used to cover the Great Stuff with brown or black silicone, and then I would cover it with cocoa fiber, tree fern fiber, cork bark, anything of that nature. You could find it at all your pet stores. I would cover the silicone with that, and it would look like dirt essentially. But that worked. I still have a tank in the garage that it's an old top lifter. Still has the Great Stuff there. It hasn't seen moisture in years, but it still holds up. It doesn't start to peel off or anything. It's silicone, and it's permanent. So it worked, but I never really got plant growth to grow up the Great Stuff wall. It didn't seem to want to root through the silicone. I don't know if that was acting as a barrier, and the roots just couldn't really get through it and actually stand up and start growing up a wall. At least for me. Some people may have had different experiences. Maybe I didn't put enough of the cocoa fiber on or something, but just didn't really work out for me. So what I did that for years though. and plant bromeliads in it, and the bromeliads would root fine. They rooted fine into it. Other plant, now I did used to cut holes in the foam and then set an actual planter, like a little pot, and have the plant grow in there. I used to do that way with some mixed results. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. As I feel like the whole dart frog community does that every day on every new tank. Something's going to work, something's not going to work. Very rarely does every single thing work in the tank. So, like I said, did that for years, worked out fine, and then my buddy Josh Moore, if you guys are watching this video, I'm sure you probably follow him too. If you don't, go check him out. It's one of my great buddies, and we were talking about how we build tanks, what he did, what I did. He did the foam as well, but then he would paint the foam in Drylok, and he'd mix cement color into it, and then he would cover that with the Titebond 3 and the Coco Core, the mix, and it wasn't as like a barrier like silicone, so the plants could root into that. So I was like, you know what, I'll give that a try. So I went to give that a try and kind of just stumbled onto my whatever accident, and I liked it this way better than I've never done the Titebond. I never got to that point. I did the great stuff, and then I carved the heck out of it using X-Acto blades or the extendable razor blade. It extends up and it locks in place. That's what I carve everything with, and so I carved the heck out of it and did the Drylok method, which if you don't know what Drylok is, it comes in a gallon bucket. You can get it at Home Depot or Lowe's. It comes in white, comes in gray, and I buy the gray. And then you don't want to just paint gray Drylok on. It's not going to look naturalistic at all. You want to mix some. They have Quikrete sells these little bottles of. It's just called cement color, and they have terracotta. They have a brown, and I think they have charcoal, which is like black. So basically, or it may just be actual black. But for the first coat of that, I did I mixed black and a little bit of brown into the gray and made a really dark charcoaly-ish brown color. And I painted the first coat, just painted direct with a paintbrush directly onto the background. I let it dry for a few hours till it was dry to touch, but it didn't cure anything. It was just dry to the touch. And then I made another batch with the Drylok, and I mixed Drylok, more brown, and a little bit of terracotta, and then just a very small amount of black to get it a nice earthy brown reddish color in there mixed with gray. So I painted the second coat on, but I didn't paint the entire surface of the background, just mainly the outermost areas of the foam. So it gave the effect of what's closest to the eye is going to be lighter in color like in nature, and the deep crevices and all those little grooves and everything, they're going to be the darker color, which is going to resemble a dirt wall or a rocky cliff, anything like that. So it's going to resemble nature, and I do have an art background, so I kind of there's something when I'm making something, I usually have a certain way I want something to look, and I know it's going to get covered up by plants and in vines and all that fun stuff, but I want it to look good from the moment I'm done with it till 3 years down the road and it's covered in plants. I want it to look good through that whole process. It's just how I am. You certainly don't have to be that way. There's people that put great stuff on, they don't carve it at all. They put silicone on, tree fern fiber, whatever, and call it a day. And it looks fine a few years, but I think at first it doesn't look really too nice. It doesn't look naturalistic to me. So that's just what I did. But then so I painted it with the lighter color, like the brownish color, and it looked really cool. And it had, it was, it wasn't static. It was, very organic, and as far as the way the colors blended, and it looked naturalistic. So the next step was to do the Titebond, and I really liked the way it looked without it. So I just put up a Facebook post, and I had the two tanks that I was doing, and posted a picture, and said, next up Titebond 3, and someone was like, why are you changing it? It looks really good. And I was really happy that someone said that, because I didn't want to do the Titebond. So I didn't do the Titebond, and just let it cure for 3 days, and then I sprayed it really well with my pump sprayer here, which this is my pump sprayer. So I don't even know if they still sell these, but I've had this for probably 10 years. And I did customize it with one of those tips they sell at like PetSmart or Pet Supplies Plus, one of those little fine mist tips. I just kind of siliconed it on there, and it sprays a fine mist. So I sprayed the heck out of it till, I could, it was about 3 days later when I sprayed it, and there were very few suds or anything like a reaction from the paint and the water mixing. So I knew it was cured. But I still let it air out for about another 2 days before planting it and doing all the false bottom and all that stuff. You always do the background first, at least in my whenever I'm doing it. That's my route, is I do the background first and then false bottom and then plant. So once I painted it, next was to let it air out for a couple days, which I did, and then time for planting. After everything was done with the substrate and everything. So what I do with bromeliads, I just jam the stolon right through. You don't need to poke a hole or anything. Sometimes you may need to start, like, just push your finger pretty firm and kind of give it an indent or something, because that Drylok, when it dries, it's hard, so it makes the foam harder too. If you just do silicone, silicone's soft. So the silicone, if you push on the foam when you do silicone over it, it's still spongy. You can still push on it. It's really soft. The Drylok, when it dries over the foam is hard. And I actually like that better, because it's a better, the bromeliads hold up better in it. They don't want to sag as much. But I still do, when I plant it, I'll put a toothpick, make a little X, and go around the stolon to keep it, from when it gets filled with water, from falling over. But once it roots, which is maybe about 2-3 weeks, it starts to root and everything. You can pull those toothpicks out and it'll hold up fine. But so once you do that, so this was all testing for me, doing the bromeliads, and they started rooting maybe like a week after, which is really fast. And I started laying vines on the ground and trying to make them look like they were climbing up. And I never had that really work for me with the silicone method, but the Drylok method, vines grew up it fine. And I don't understand how, but moss grows on it. Everything grows on the Drylok really well. Margravia climbs up it fine, spreads and sends off runners, which is all things that I wanted to happen while having a naturalistic looking background. To be honest with you, and I've also used Hygrolon to cover. I can't tell you if I've had better results with Hygrolon or the Drylok as far as plant growth. They're neck and neck. I mean, I can't really say one's better than the other. I know Hygrolon, it's going to hold more water, no doubt. It's going to hold more water in that background. And plants that need moisture will be able to feed off of that Hygrolon. But I don't know if it's just because I missed my tank so often that it's able to grow fine on the Drylok. But which we'll get into how often I missed, how wet my tanks are, what kind of circulation I have in future episodes. But like I said, this is all about the backgrounds in this one. So I mean, the plants grow everything. They grow really well into it. So, I mean, I've given you pretty much my method on how I do it. The great stuff, carving, and then, which I can go into detail more. I'll be doing another tank soon, a really large tank here, and I'll post videos, what the great stuff era looks like, and then what the carving portion looks like, and then what the Drylok portion looks like. So I'll post videos in between each one of them to give you a better idea of how I actually do it. But the process, it's great stuff, carve, Drylok, wait.